in to CLDF Chatter.
To give you a quick overview, CLDF is a national charity which supports families whose child has a childhood liver disease, and as part of the charity we have a young people's service which provides support to 11 to 24-year-olds living with a liver condition. The Young People's Service has an online group called Hive and Hive Plus on Facebook, which enables members to connect online and share experiences.
I am the Young People's Digital Engagement Officer at CLDF. Today we would like to give a warm welcome to
Maxine, who has been previously supported by the charity and is now a young adult who is going to reflect on her liver journey so far. So, hi Maxine, I know today is a very special day as it's your 19th year post-transplant anniversary.
Yeah, it is.
It's a special day to have you on the podcast, which is a lovely way to mark the occasion. But yes, it's lovely to have you on the podcast, and we very much welcome you coming back and telling your story as a young adult, and obviously talking us through the years and where you're at now. So do you want to introduce yourself and give me a brief summary of your journey?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Maxine. I had a liver transplant when I was 11 due to having Wilson's disease. So from my understanding, it is a genetic disorder that's passed from both parents that affects the amount of copper that you hold in your liver. When I had my transplant, I was sort of at the end of that journey that we didn't know about, that my body had been fighting this disease. There was so much copper that it then decided to turn into poison in my liver and travel around, and that was the stage of me finding out then that I had to go down the transplant route. Normally it can be dealt with just with medication and stuff, but unfortunately I was past that point for Wilson's.
So how old were you when this all happened?
I was 11 when this happened. I had encephalitis on the brain at the time, so it does affect my memory of it all. I don't remember a great deal. I think I mostly remember my recovery afterward, but it all happened quite fast, I would say.
Yeah.
I became not well, and then within days I was in hospital getting tests and things to find out what was going on, because at that time we still had no idea that it was actually my liver. And it wasn't until I was flown down to Birmingham to the specialist team there that then decided that's what it was and I needed a liver transplant urgently. So I think it was just a matter of a week of being down there. They had said to my mum that basically my liver had passed and there was nothing that it could do. So I was put on a life support machine, and they told my mum they had sort of 24 hours to find a liver for me. So they were putting me on this super urgent transplant list. And it just so happened that it was the next again morning that they pulled my mum back into the same room to say, well, actually, a liver became available. It is only like a 96% match. So they had to talk about all the risks and things then, and I was transplanted that day.
That is fast, isn't it? A lot to deal with at the age of 11, and also for your family as well.
Yeah.
I'd imagine, obviously, you wouldn't have never thought it would have been liver, because not many people think children get liver disease for some reason. But yeah, obviously your story is probably going to educate a lot of people. I mean, how old are you now?
30 now.
So you're now a young adult, and we'll find out more about that. So thank you for sharing, obviously, what it was like to get diagnosed, and being aged 11, I can imagine you slightly remember some of it as well.
Yeah.
So your story is quite unique in that sense, because it's not like you were a baby, you were a child in school. What was it like being diagnosed at that age and, like you say, being told that you needed an emergency transplant, to the point where, from recovery as well, when you had your transplant, if you remember bits about that?
The diagnosis itself, I don't remember. I don't ever remember being sat down and being told that's what I had, because I was still recovering, I was still going through it, and it was a very long time before it came round to me to understand it more and realise that's what it was. I was only 11, I was only with my mum, and I was very scared. So a lot of the information that I had at the time really did sort of go in one ear and out the other, or I had so much going on that I just don't remember. So my mum dealt with a lot of that side of things, medically, learning what they all were, learning what life would be like for me going forward with long-term medication, things like that. After my transplant, that's when I sort of remember my recovery. I was 11, so of course I was in primary, being in Birmingham meant not being there at all, so I missed out on a lot. My recovery was very long. I think there was a lot of emotions involved. It was very much like a roller coaster from what I can remember. I just remember feeling overwhelmed, upset, angry, I suppose. So yeah, it took a long time to sort of get round to knowing what just happened to me, what my body had went through, and what it would look like for me going forward. So I was in Birmingham for quite a long time. My recovery was, I'd say, fully from my transplant to going home, it was definitely about 2 years going through it all. I had rejection quite a lot. From the moment I woke up, I think I had rejection within the first 6 weeks. I had to learn a lot again, like when it came to education and stuff. When I woke up, because of that fluid on the brain, I'd forgotten how to read and write and walk and stuff like that. So they're all things that I had to learn again through recovery, which I found probably more difficult. So yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard to go through.
A long process really of recovery, wasn't it, for you in your journey? Yeah. So that's not for everybody. Like, everybody's case is individual, but in your particular circumstance, learning to read, write and walk are some big skills to learn again when you're so used to doing that in daily life. It's a challenge in your own mindset as well, isn't it, to kind of get back into that and understand that you've got to try your best to try and, like I say, take those steps again. I can imagine that was quite a difficult period in your journey to handle. But on top of that, with the long recovery, you also had to deal with the fact that with your recovery being so long, you're away from home such a long period of time. Obviously, mum was with you when you got the news and took all that decision making as well at the age of 11. But do you want to tell us a little bit about like your family, like what size family you've got, and how did that impact the family life that you were used to before obviously the transplant happened?
Yeah, so I'm from quite a big family. I'm blessed, and there's 7 of us all together. So I've got 3 brothers and 3 sisters and my mum. So of course, before all that, it was a busy household. My youngest brother at the time, he was only 2. So of course, there's still lots of running around, and obviously having to be away from them for so long, everything just went into a complete uproar. Survival mode, I think. You know, of course, my mum decided to stay with me and come to Birmingham, of course, but it meant everyone back home. My auntie had to move in and sort of look after them, and obviously get some help from my gran as well. My oldest brother, he was in high school, so I think it took a lot from him as well, and we were quite a close family. I got on really well with my brothers and sisters, all sibling arguments aside. Yeah, we were really close-knit, and then to have me not there, it just shook everything, the whole dynamic, everything flipped. It was really difficult, and all I wanted to do was speak to them or go home to them. So yeah, it was really difficult.
I know like FaceTime and WhatsApp chat has all become available now, but I think at the age of 11 back then, I don't think it was really that out there, was it? So
no, it was not a thing at all. It was more phone calls. But when my mum did try and phone home to speak to my family, we used to get so upset that we would just be on the phone crying, and they'd be crying on the other side. So we weren't really getting anywhere. We were just totally sobbing because I just wanted to see them and have a bit of normality back. They missed my mum so much. Of course, my little brother was only 2, and I think all we done was cry every time we phoned each other. So yeah, it made it really difficult. And I don't think if my mum wasn't as strong to make that decision, and I didn't have good family at the time, like my aunties and my gran, to sort of jump in and take over, then we would have most definitely fell to bits.
Big commitment, isn't it? Like you say, to have to leave one side of the family behind, because obviously another child like yourself needed priority to get that transplant, and obviously mum needed to be at your side. But it's really good that you had that family support, and you've got auntie that's helped, and nan by the sounds of it, to help raise the other siblings. It's quite a topic at the moment that we're exploring, is obviously transplant and, you know, the surgery and all the health implications that come with having liver disease that, you know, majorly affect you as a person on your, you know, your journey. Sometimes you'll have good days, sometimes you'll have bad, but it also can affect the siblings at home. And obviously you notice that they found out that you weren't there all the time, or they were, say, missing mom. Family dynamics had just changed like really quickly overnight as well, especially because yours was such a rare case as well, wasn't it? It's quite a big thing. So it's quite a difficult journey, isn't it, when you get diagnosed quite suddenly? And we've got lots of young people who I support who can also relate with that and have had similar experiences of being diagnosed in childhood, not in their wildest dreams thinking it would have been liver related.
Yeah.
It's not something that
No,
would cross your mind, or potentially need a donor. You wouldn't think of that, would you? So
no,
um
definitely not.
a
I
big,
think
big
going through
shock.
that, I was very much under the impression that when I went to the hospital, I was going home. I would
Yeah.
maybe get medicine to feel better, but yeah, I was going home and that was it. So for it to flip completely and then have to be rushed elsewhere and go through everything and even try and comprehend that you're having a liver transplant when only a few days before you genuinely thought you were going home, it's massive to try and digest that.
Especially when, like you say, in your head, well, in everybody's head, normally you visit a hospital thinking they'll just give me something for it, or they'll find
Yeah.
out. When they found out, you didn't expect it to be that big. It's a very brave move to make at such a young age, and obviously it's a very big achievement now when you look back at what your family and yourself have all been through. Again, today being your transplant anniversary, I think it's a very proud thing to talk about. So it's great that you're sharing this story. Thank you. I know you've mentioned obviously that your recovery was quite long and it took some time to obviously learn some of the basic skills again. But once you had recovered, what was it like to try and get back to a normal routine and get back to school? Because at your age, obviously, it was still compulsory for you to attend. What was that
Yeah.
like?
I feel like that sometimes that's worse than recovery. Once I'd eventually got home and stuff, because I'd missed so much school, I had to repeat my primary 7, which is in primary school. So I had to actually stay back a year, repeat that before I could move forward. So I found that really difficult because it meant all the friends that I'd had throughout all my childhood, they'd all moved on. They were going to do their primary 7 and go to high school. And I had to start all over again. I was still fatigued at the time. I had chronic fatigue really bad. So I had to have like a part-time timetable for going back to primary. So I felt like it made me probably stand out even more than what I actually did already. And then during that time, because I still couldn't manage getting to school as well, I was homeschooled at the same time. So I was doing a bit of both, a bit of juggling to try and catch up or go through that. So yeah, I found that really difficult. And then of course you have all the questions of where have you been? What's happened? Trying to explain that to kids in class that you've just went back to is quite daunting in itself, and I didn't really know what to say. So I think even at that point, I kind of took a step back and I realised actually things are going to change for me more than what I thought they already had.
You don't really think about the after, do you? When obviously you're in that moment and you hear about your health and what you've got to go through surgery wise and the recovery process, you'd never think, what about what's going to happen when I return back to school?
Yeah,
Like you wouldn't think about the longevity of that because you don't know how long your recovery is going to be. But in your situation, obviously going back to a different year group, you were going back on the fact that you were chronically fatigued.
yeah.
So that was going to be difficult in itself, but also to a whole new group of friends that you've got to try and make too. Did you have a good teacher that helped you at this point, or anybody within the school that were quite good support, or was that another challenge that you faced?
Yeah, I did. I think it was done quite strategic as such with my head teacher. He was really good at the time and he'd chosen sort of a teacher for the next year that would be able to support me. So yeah, I did have a really good teacher to get through. However, being that child that now stands out, every teacher still kind of looks at you different. So I still found it really hard. And during that time, repeating my P7 year, I still was sick. I was still getting rejection. So I still missed a lot of that as well. So that was really hard going through and then deciding if I was going to high school or not and, what that was going to look like. And I just felt like I was starting all over again after I'd just done it for a year. So yeah, and I think that's where it was a lot harder because you're in your teenage years, you're going to high school, you're going to make friends all over again. And again, I fell sick. I had rejection again. So right starting off in high school, it was the same. I'd missed quite a lot. Felt like I was back at square one doing that. My attitude kind of started to change.
Hearing all this, I bet there was times where you got so frustrated for what was going on how did you manage that emotion when things were getting tough at high school and you were probably getting quite frustrated with your condition?
I probably didn't manage it very well. I started to really feel, why me? Why do I have to get ill again? Why do I have to be this person? Why do I have to go through what I'm going through? And I feel like it really made me take a step back. I missed so much education, especially high school, that when I was there, felt like I wasn't really there. And there was so much going on in my mind. And to me, when I was that age, all I wanted to do was be a normal child that would fit in and make friends. And even me having this condition, that wasn't going to happen for me. So I started to really hate it and dislike what I was going through. And I was angry, I was annoyed, and nothing was going my way. So I decided I was just going to ignore it as such and change my attitude that I wasn't going to tell anyone that I'd had this like condition or I had something that made me different from others, because I felt like every time I did, I was always looked at differently. I just sort of done a 360, I think. And
You
thought,
just tried to carry on as like nothing had happened then
yeah,
when you obviously were connecting with new people and new
yeah,
friendship. And did you find that helped?
probably not, no. I was still missing loads. I was still getting sick. So I was still missing so much education that in between, I just used to skip school for the sake of it. I thought there's no point. I'm not going to learn anything because I'm only going to be there for a fortnight and I'm going to be ill again. I want to try and make friends while I am there. So I'm just not going to mention it. It's not a thing. So that's how I decided I was going to try and go forward.
And did you share how you felt with your family at home?
I definitely got my support from my family, yeah. My brothers and sisters, my mum, they were still my rock through that. And at that time I did have like support teachers and things. And I was still getting homeschooled. So I'd still have my lessons at home that I did enjoy. With my home teacher, I grew quite close to her. I wouldn't tell them the extent of what I wasn't doing at school, so I wouldn't say I'm not mentioning it to people. I think they just thought I was coming into like a moody teenager phase, that started to rebel and not like school and things. But actually, deep down, it probably was because of what I'd been through, and I felt like there wasn't a space for me there to go through that. There wasn't another child in that school that had been through or went through similar. So I kind of felt alone in that aspect.
Quite challenging then, like you say, to balance all that emotion.
Yeah.
You've got so many changes happen to you at such a young age. So I think it's only normal to feel the way that you felt in some
Yeah.
ways because it's just a lot to handle. And I mean, a lot of the young people that I've spoken to, some of them have definitely gone through that phase of why me? Why has this happened to me? You know, that frustration, that anger, and even to the point where they do go through episodes where they, like you say, pretend it's not there, but pretend it's not there to an extreme extent where they may stop taking the medication. And that's some of the dangers that come with that as well.
Yeah.
Did that cross your mind at all?
At points, probably, yeah. However, like I mentioned, I've got a huge family at home, and my mum was always on the ball. She sort of arranged my medicine for me. I didn't take that on. I didn't know the names of things. There were still so many things that I was taking that my mum still sort of done it for me. And she used to lay it out for me every morning and every night with a cup of tea and make me take it or be like, remember you have to do that. And I had brothers and sisters watching me, young ones that I wanted to look up to me. So I felt like that was maybe being a bit silly. Still wanted to be here. I was just going through a rough time. I could see why people would think that or not want to do that, but I did. But I think that was mostly from my family that kept me at that.
Encourage the importance of taking it, even though you're going through a really rough time. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I did go in a mood sometimes trying to take her. I'd be like, oh, this is stupid, this is rubbish. But
yeah,
I always did. I mean, I have a 3-year-old brother staring at me and be like, take your medicine, Maxine. So yeah, I had to do that.
So I can imagine, Maxine, when you had all these feelings and obviously you were up and down days, especially more the down days when things got really difficult, when you were due to go for a hospital appointment and you were taking on all these changes and how it impacted your life, how was that? What was your approach to going to an appointment at the hospital?
Again, I think I became very rebellious and probably disconnected in a way. I had the same attitude. I was taking all this medicine. I'd had this major operation. I'd had rejection so many times. I had issues with my bile duct that I was getting to the point where, well, this is never ending. This is clearly not working for me. So I'm just going to sit with an attitude and I'll let my mum speak to them. And I didn't like it. And I think because I was a teenager and I was battling everything else as well, it was kind of put down to that. So I don't think, I mean, I had an amazing team of doctors at the Sick Kids. All of them were fantastic. But I feel like at some points I looked at them as the bad ones. They were making me go through this. They were making me take medicine. And I think that's genuinely how I looked at them for a long time. Looking back now after life lessons, I know that they were just doing their job and doing the right thing. And you do have to go through that sometimes. But at the time, I hated it. I thought, you know, you want to give me all these jags and keep me in hospital again. You're keeping me away from having this life that I'm meant to have. So yeah, I don't think it got to a point that I didn't really want to speak to them. I just used to make my mum speak to them, or if they asked me a question, I used to be like, I don't know.
Yeah,
and
shrug your shoulders and that's it.
Yeah, totally have that teenage attitude with them.
Say your mum was like, oh, we've got an appointment coming up. Did you used to be like, I don't want to go? Or
yeah, I felt like it was just going to mean another thing happening, or
yeah,
no, it didn't mean anything. Nothing else was changing for me. I was still on a lot of medicine at the time. So I just felt like that's how it was going to be. So there wasn't really much point. Every appointment came with getting bloods done or getting a scan done, or the bloods weren't quite right. So it was like a relentless journey that I was going through that I just thought, no, I don't like this anymore.
And then how did you cope when they started to introduce like the word, we're going to start transitioning you to adult services? How did you take that?
I didn't feel like it was going to be any different. I felt like it just meant I was moving to a different team now. I didn't realise that that meant that I was doing better because I was well enough to be moved to adult services. They kept me quite late in age, like I think I was a lot older, but it's just because I'd had so many issues and I had rejection so many times, they were quite keen to keep me. So when they'd said to me at my next appointment someone from the adult services would be there, I really didn't think much of it at all, and I just thought, oh great, like someone else to add into the mix that's
I was going
meant
to
to
say, another professional in the room.
Yeah. Looking back now, I know that that was actually probably a point where I was getting better and things were moving on to where I wanted my life to be. But of course, at that time, I didn't really look at it like that at all. I just, again, shrugged my shoulder and I thought, oh, whatever, yeah, okay. And then that was it. I met her a couple of times there. And then they said to me, you know, at your next appointment, you're going to be in this adult hospital and you'll see this lady going forward now. That was kind of it. I didn't really know what that meant.
You've done the transition, Dylan. Obviously, I hope nowadays you don't shrug your shoulder at your doctor. So I'm sure there's a story behind where you've come all these years and how you've now managed your own health in adult services. How did it change with your relationship and your doctors?
I think the doctor that I got, her name's Dr. Blair, and she's absolutely fantastic, but she must have dealt with a lot of people like me because she just done perfect straight away. I didn't think I was going to like her. I was going to try not to like her. But when I had my first appointment with her, she kind of spoke directly to me and not my mum. And she would speak to me about medicine and whatnot. And I think she started to change things, which I quite like. She took me off quite a lot of the medicine that I was on after listening to what I was saying and being like, oh, you know, it's meant to let me do this. It's meant to let me have a life. And I don't feel like I have that. So when she done that, I started to think differently and think, maybe this is good. She's actually listening to me. I've said what I'm not happy about and she's kind of changed something straight away for me. So I think my attitude started to change again. And we had a lot of chats, probably a lot of heart-to-hearts, and it just made her feel a bit more special. And then we just started to grow a relationship from there. Don't get me wrong, it still wasn't easy. I still had a lot to go through. I still had bile duct issues quite a lot. I still had hard times, but I think speaking to her about it and how I was feeling kind of made sense to how I was feeling. I don't know if that sounds right. Like I wasn't stupid. And it was okay to feel like that. And it was okay to be like that because that's just part of the journey.
Got somebody that was willing to, like you say, treat you as an adult, because that's what adult services do,
Yeah.
and they'll like sit there and explain everything. And
Yeah.
I know from experience of talking to other young people, sometimes they find it better when they know the full story and they're being spoken to honestly and truthfully about their situation
Yeah.
than the difference of when you're a child and they address your parent and not necessarily share some of the most honest things, because that's also when the parent needs to explain to their child what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
was it easier, like you say, to get used to that kind of treatment in adult services, that you were fully aware of what was going on in your health and your control?
Yeah. I think at that point my mum took a step back slightly, as in dealing with my medicine or even coming to appointments with me. She was still always there as a support. But I think when I started to go and speak to them myself, I really started to grow and probably understand. I understood the medicines that I was on and why she was taking me off them and things like that. And I felt like she made me feel like no question was too silly. So I was asking questions that I probably wouldn't have asked before. But it's because I felt comfortable with her to go through face to face as an adult. And yeah, it was great. I mean, still had to go through things. I still had to stay in hospital by myself, which was an even more daunting experience being in an adult services rather than kids. Kids is always light and light-hearted and colourful and
Posters on the wall, yeah.
yeah, adults is not like that, and that was another scary thing. But I think speaking with her and going through journeys with her really opened my eyes to how I wanted to live, and she just explained what was possible at that time, what wasn't, but when it would be possible. You know, it was never a, no, you can't do that and that's it. She would explain, you know, right now you can't do that, but I can't see why you wouldn't be able to in your future. So I think because I had that more of an open conversation rather than like a no shut down, I was willing to sort of work with them and grow on that and sort of become who I am today.
And by the sounds of it, focusing more on what your life is rather than it's all about my condition and liver. Actually, my liver and condition fits in within my life, but doesn't necessarily define who I am.
Yeah,
you know, it's just advice, isn't it? And that's something you've explored with your doctor in terms of choices that you can potentially make with that as well.
I think from that, started to work at that time. I'd left education and stuff, and I think I was more open to it because I'd sort of had a different look on it now. I started to like introduce it more. So if I was at work, I would say to someone, you know, or if they wanted me to go and do something, or you know, we were speaking about stuff, I was more open to actually having that conversation or saying it out loud again than I was previous. And I think that was me just starting to be probably more true to myself, or realizing who I want to share things with and who I need to. And I think that's when it's really started to hit home that I actually did have a choice. It was my life, so I could make these choices for myself going forward.
Like you say, it's all part of a journey, and it's learning one about your condition, how to manage it, how you cope with it, how you live your future life with it. And this is all that roller coaster that you've been on. Got to that point where you realise, well, this is who I am, and this is my life, and this is what I want to do with it. And it sounds like you've got a very good professional behind you, obviously supporting you and giving you the advice that you need and when you need it. It'd be interesting, actually, Maxine, to get some advice from you for others who feel disconnected from their condition, maybe their hospital appointments. Like, what would you advise those young people that just feel like they relate to you and how you felt when you were in that room and not wanting to talk? What piece of advice would you give them to maybe encourage them to get to a point where you are today?
Everyone's story is different, so everyone goes through their own journey. And sometimes it takes different things to help other people realise where they are. But I think the more you're honest with yourself and other people, whether that be your medical team or someone that's supporting you from the charity, if you're just a little bit more open-minded and want to ask the questions, it might change how you're feeling. And it's not forever. I know that sounds so cringy and so cliche to say, but it is just part of the journey that you have to go through. And there's always going to be hurdles where you're finding it difficult, whether that be with your condition or how you're feeling about it. So I think the more open that you can be and really just feel how you need to feel in that moment and know that it's not going to be forever, then it's just a little easier to try and go through what you need to go through at that time to come out at the end where you want to be. And I think if you know where you want to be or have an idea of that, then it would definitely help.
Oh, yeah, like a goal and
Yeah.
something to focus on for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's one of the difficult things, isn't it? Sometimes you can have it in your mind and you go, well, I won't be able to do this in the future. I won't be able to do that in the future. But there, like you said, your consultant has been quite honest with you and said, well, it might be something you can't do now, but not then. So
Yeah.
I think it's about, like you say, being open and honest. And if there's something you feel really maybe low about because you've been told potentially you can't do that, or it's something that isn't possible, I guess
Yeah.
it's being honest about that feeling and getting the advice about how that affects you. And it might be that one day you possibly could do it.
Yeah.
And if they're honest with you and potentially, you know, for the very minority of people that potentially can't do something for certain reason, then you at least being honest about how you feel and getting that support for your feelings as well.
Yeah. If I was told no when I was in children's services, I took it quite literally and it was a no and that was it. So I'd never ask again because I've always thought it's been a no. And I was always under the impression that because my condition was genetic, it meant I could never have kids. Or if I did have kids, they would go through exactly what I went through. And I would never want to put a child through that. So I just always thought I can never have kids, or I'm never going to have kids because I don't want to do that to them. And it wasn't until I came into adult services and I'd been going through it with them for a bit longer. I'd been with them for a couple of years and they started talking about changing a medicine, what it meant. And I just thought, why are you changing that medicine now? And that got onto the conversation of having children, what it may do to your body, coming off that medicine, what it means. And lo and behold, after that conversation and after coming off that, after a year, I fell pregnant with my little boy. So something that I took as a quite literal no from what they've said and never questioning it again is actually a complete opposite. And I never thought that that would be something that I could go through in my life.
That's one of the things that people do worry about the future is children starting a family and how that looks. But like you say, every case is individual, and there's plenty of young people that I've supported that have gone on to adulthood and had children like yourself. I guess that's where your consultant that you've got a very good relationship with answered a lot of those questions for you. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just from simply opening up something to me that I didn't think would be possible. And from there, I just started to keep asking questions. We kept going through it. We had a couple of extra appointments. She was able to sort of let me speak to other professionals in different areas that dealt with that I didn't even know was possible. So I think, again, coming back to that, being open and honest and asking the questions really does get you end results or answers that you never thought was possible.
It's amazing to hear that you are now a mum. Probably keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. What was it like being pregnant and managing your condition?
Do you know what? It kind of went like any normal pregnancy. There was a little bit more to it, as in speaking to other people or extra appointments. There was some extra appointments. I did have one blip when I was pregnant from my bile duct. But because my team was so great, there were so many professionals involved that I had like my own sort of
Consultant.
yeah. And she made me feel so at ease, and my partner as well, that we managed to go through our whole pregnancy and enjoy it and still have all these special moments that anyone else would have, and just maybe just have a little bit more close eye on bloods, medicine, but there was no major change. I didn't have to, go through any specific or get medications changed or anything like that. It was a very nice journey to be able to go through and enjoy as well. So yeah, I don't feel like it was much different. There was more to think about, of course, and I still always remembered that I had that there, and any concerns that I did have, like a genetic disorder or passing that on, they were very much putting me at ease, and I got tests to make sure that wasn't the case. My partner got tested as well just to make sure. But yeah, it was actually still a really nice, emotional but lovely journey to actually go through. and realised that that's why I had that liver transplant, to let me do all these normal things that I'm now doing, like having a baby, having my own house, like anyone else would.
Did you go through more scans during your pregnancy?
Yeah, I had a few
Yeah.
more scans just to make sure it wasn't anything dangerous. It was just being so precautious. I think I maybe had 3 extra scans, but they were still nice because then, of course, it means you get to see baby again. So what's
I
not
was going to
so about
say,
that?
yeah. More ultrasound photos. I was going to say, you can see that as a positive, can't you? And when you've got more scans, that's probably one of the positives, really, that you
Yeah,
can check up more frequently. You're getting consultant support, so you've always got that helping hand watching your health every step of the way, regardless if that's
yeah.
about liver. But the fact that you've got another consultant on board for pregnancy, it's unique, but it's great. You're going to get that support.
Definitely felt more unique to go through, but also special because it was showing to me that I'm doing all these things, all these things that I never thought that I'd be able to do. And I just, so many times through it, I used to sit and think, if I could tell 15-year-old me this right now, she'd never believe me because these are all things that I used to doubt that I would do. I used to doubt that I'd ever find a partner or be able to have kids or enjoy life and have friends and all that. And actually going through each one kind of is like a milestone. And I'm like, wow, I've done that,
Yeah.
me myself. I've put myself through it. I've done the journey and now I'm here. So I think actually having a pregnancy just made me feel like I was where I was meant to be and I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing now.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, if you could tell yourself that information back then, probably would have took a lot away, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety. So thank you for sharing, because that is one thing that a lot of people do question for their futures. And it's great to hear that you've managed to do that and you've got a healthy and happy little boy. And now you're learning the reins of motherhood.
And that's something else on its own.
So, Maxine, in yourself now, how do you view your condition and your lifestyle?
I don't think I view it in any different way at all. It's a part of me. It always will be a part of me. It's just a case of how I manage that going forward and what I want to take from that. I very much don't let it rule me. And within reason, I don't discount anything that I can't do. I'll always try and do what I want or set out for what I want to do in life and go through what I need to go through. I still have hard times. I still go through appointments. I still stay in hospital quite a lot. But it's how I deal with them now and the outlook that I have on life now that changes my mindset to be able to get there and look at it differently so that I don't let it totally destroy how I'm feeling. But I wouldn't put it as a one-side thing anymore, or I wouldn't just say, it's just a condition that I have. It's just part of me now and it always will be. It takes going through all of that to realise that actually I'm forever grateful for it. And it's made me who I am today, so I wouldn't change any of it for the world.
And when times are hard or when it gets a bit rough, like you've now got a supportive partner as well that I can imagine you can find in, and a mom that
Yeah,
regularly, that sounds a bit calls you as of today on your anniversary. So
yeah,
a nice big
yeah.
supportive network, and obviously coming from a big family, I'm sure they're all there for you, aren't they, when times are
Oh,
difficult?
they are.
Because
They are.
yeah, it's nice to hear that like you still now go on to live your life how you want to, and you don't necessarily let it define what you want to achieve. And if there is any doubt or worry, you just get that checked with your medical team to see if it's something that you can work around. It's a nice way to see it, because that is the gift of organ donation, is to enable you to carry on and live a normal life. And that's exactly what you should be doing, is
Yeah.
living that normal life. So now you're 90 years post-transplant today. How do you feel about it?
Emotional. Day to day, I don't really look back and think about what position I was in or what me and my family went through. I'm always just very grateful for being here and being able to do the things that I do now. So when it comes to an anniversary or when I get not well and things like that, I really look back on it and I think, wow, like what a journey to go through, what an experience to have behind me as well to just make me a better person. So I'd say mostly emotional is what it makes me. I think I felt every emotion possible going through it, but also just happy. I mean, life's a blessing, and what I've went through, like I said, it's just made me who I am today, and it makes me be the kind of mum that I want to be. So I just have to just be grateful for it, and it's always nice to remember what's happened. So, but like I said, it'll always be a part of me, so it's not something that I'm going to forget anytime soon. But yeah, I'd say it's been beautiful but hard.
Hard journey, but worthwhile to where you are now. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think now you have got a little boy. I think that probably puts it all into perspective, especially when you give that love and care to a little one. And you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this is an only way to get that to
Yeah.
do this. So
You see it from both sides. Like, obviously, getting that done as a child, I only feel like a child would and go through it that way. I've never really thought about what my mum had went through or the kind of decisions that she had to make or what it meant as a parent. And now that I can see it from both sides. So when I do think about it, or when I do speak about it with my mum, it does make me emotional because I can now see it from her point of view.
It's more relatable to you now, isn't it? Like you can see both sides of the story, which is quite special. Because not many people can do that, and the fact that you can, there's going to be a lot of parents listening going, wow, that's incredible, because you have been the young child that understands completely what it's like to receive a transplant and go through that surgery and the recovery and everything that comes with it, but also now open and can reflect back on actually what it's like to be that parent that has to watch that child go through all of that. It is quite a skill to be able to reflect back on both sides of the story. And I think, like you say, being a mum yourself now has probably helped with that kind of understanding. Has it made you closer to your mum?
We were quite close anyway. We were in Birmingham together for such a long time. She was only one I used to really vent to, or I used to take it out on my mum a lot, as you do. So we were quite close anyway. I think it's just a different understanding now, and I can see it mum to mum. Not even that, just things growing up. You realise, you think, I understand that decision that was made, and I support it now in a different way. So I wouldn't say it's made us closer because we already were, but we were best friends anyway. So I still see it from both sides, which is nice.
You have been on an incredible journey, Maxine, and there's so much detail into your story that I'm sure you could make many podcasts and many chapters about because with every part of your journey there's going to be more to the story, and it'd be great to explore that if we ever want to come back and talk about certain topics. But as an overview, your story will help many to find comfort in, relate to what you've been through. So it'd be great to hear from your perspective now. What advice would you give to other young people from your experience? Now you have achieved a lot, obviously, with working, moving out and being a mum. What would be your biggest advice now you look back on your journey to where you are now?
I'm not the best at advice, but one of my friends said to me recently, you grow through what you go through. And it really stood out because I thought, that's so right. You grow as a person because of what you've done or what you've went through and what you've had to go through in your life to be where you are now. So I think advice-wise, you just have to be open and honest with anyone that you feel comfortable with, whether that be someone in the charity, your parent, a friend, the hospital. If you're open and honest about how you're feeling, there will be someone there that can help you or get you the right help that you need. And all of it is a life lesson. So when you then get to my age or after that, whenever, you'll probably look back and think the exact same. And I don't think you'll ever regret anything because it's made you who you are today and made you that strong person. So I would say the same, even if you're a parent going through that, I think all your feelings are valid and everyone's probably felt them at some point. People just maybe haven't been as honest about it. And because you don't hear it a lot, you think sometimes you're the only one going through that. But it's actually not the case at all. So I do urge anyone that does feel like that or anything, then do just be open and try and speak to someone, because there will be somewhere or someone that can point you in the right direction that you do need. Things have came a long way even from when I was 11, including CLDF, including what they can offer. And podcasts were not a thing back then. So when I was that age and going through that, if I could have a chance to sit and listen to podcasts from people going through it, then my mind, I probably would have thought a lot different, and my journey probably would have been a lot different. So I think it's amazing that people get that experience now. And there is so many things out there that's constantly evolving with loads of charities. Liver disease isn't known everywhere as a major thing. There is still quite a lot of stigma around it, like you said. So I think the charities that are involved are just absolutely phenomenal. And I think the things that they do for young people now are just amazing. And so I'd say to any young person or any parent, just grab everything you can, read into what you need to read into, listen to what you need to, just feel how you feel, and that's all you can really do.
That was a very good piece of advice there. Even though you said, I don't know if I can give advice, I think what you've just said was very true to heart, because yes, some parents would sit there and they would be like, I feel like the only one that's going through these, and I feel so low. And what you've just said has been so honest that you've nailed that. You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. And I think there's going to be many parents listening to this podcast absolutely applauding you. So well done. And there she is, tearing up on camera. Well, she has nailed it, hasn't she? So if anybody wants to leave her a comment, please do, because I think she's done incredibly well. And I do want to thank Maxine for sharing her story, because it has been a bumpy ride. And today is, like you say, your anniversary of 19 years. So it's been a bit of a tough one, I think, for you, because at the end of the day, it's always quite emotional, like you said. But I think it's going to be such a very well listened to podcast that's going to relate to many. And I think that's one of the biggest achievements you wanted to get, was that people out there can hear your story, hear the highs, hear the lows, but it just enables those people to feel like they're not alone and hear some of the advice and also the journey that you've taken. You know, like you say, having a little one, that's somebody's question out there. Going through school like you did, somebody's doing that right now. So very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
And I do agree. Your advice was very, very well said. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that you really did hit on the head, was there are going to be families out there that feel that they're struggling and they can't necessarily say that they're struggling, or they can't tell you how they feel. And yeah, like you said, reach out to friends or family, reach out to a charity, reach out to us, because there are people that can help you. And sometimes you just don't know what is out there to help you.
Yeah.
So yes, no, very well done. Thank you for coming onto the podcast and sharing your story. That's very personal to you.
Thank you for having me.
I was going to say, you've been a very good guest. So thank you very much. Spend the rest of your day with your family, and hopefully today you are doing something nice.
I think I'm maybe just going to go for some dinner later. Keep it nice and casual. But yeah, just a nice dinner, just to remember. Yeah, and just spend it with my partner and my wee boy. So that'll be nice.
A nice evening out tonight then. That'll be very nice.
Yes, no cooking for me. That is always
yes, certainly not. Yeah, that's of course. After everything today of all days, a dinner out is well deserved, I think. So yes, I'm making some special memories with your family, so that'll be very nice for you this afternoon. Thank you again.
For those that are listening in, it's lovely that you've joined us on CLDF Chatter. I am the Young People's Officer, so if you do need any support from listening to this podcast, or there's any concerns that you may have or advice that you might need, please do contact us on Hive, our online Facebook group chat, or you could email ypo@childliverdisease.org, or alternatively you can call us on 0121 212 3839, and we look forward to hearing from you.